the proof that we're capable of more than anyone imagined. Jae-sung did not hesitate. The Galactic Council chamber was built to impress. It floated in neutral space, a massive station where representatives from hundreds of species gathered to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. Today, the chamber was full. Every seat was occupied. Every species had sent their leaders. The emergency session had been called within hours of the first reports that humans had successfully boarded the Taeguk Dawn. Ambassador Velthar stood at the center of the chamber, explaining what his crew had witnessed. The humans walked onto that ship as if it welcomed them, he said, his voice carrying through the translators to every listener. Where our technology failed, theirs succeeded. Where our crew panicked, theirs adapted. They have made contact with something we deemed impossible to contact. The representative from the Velshara species, an ancient race that had been exploring space for 10,000 years, spoke next. Her voice was cold and precise. This confirms our worst fears. The humans have discovered dimensional travel. If they master this technology, the balance of power will be destroyed. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Kryn Collective representative, a being made of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, added his thoughts. We have watched humanity for the brief time they have been space-capable. They are aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerously creative. They do not follow the established rules of galactic civilization. They question everything. They refuse to accept limits. They started wars among themselves while still confined to their single planet, said the Hierarch representative. They created weapons capable of destroying their own world. They consume resources at an unsustainable rate. And now we would give them access to infinite resources across infinite realities? The Velshara representative activated a holographic display. It showed footage from various human conflicts throughout their history. Cities burning, weapons firing, ships destroying each other in orbit. Look at their nature. They are warriors. They are survivors. Give them dimensional travel, and they will spread like a virus across every reality. We have suppressed this knowledge for good reason, an elder from the Eternal Assembly said. His species had been part of the galactic community longer than anyone could remember. Dimensional travel is not a gift. It is a curse. We learned this millennia ago when a previous species discovered it. They nearly destroyed the fabric of reality itself before we could stop them. The humans must not be allowed to repeat that mistake. The Velshara representative said firmly. I propose we destroy the Taeguk Dawn immediately. No boarding, no salvage. We turn that ship and everything it contains into dust. And if the humans resist, someone asked, then we show them why the Council has maintained peace for so long. We remind them that they are young, weak, and outnumbered. We demonstrate that some boundaries exist for everyone's safety. The vote was called. Species after species raised their consent. The resolution passed with overwhelming support. The Council fleet would mobilize immediately. The Taeguk Dawn would be destroyed. Any humans aboard would be given one chance to evacuate. If they refused, they would share the ship's fate. But as the Council meeting ended and the representatives dispersed, quiet conversations happened in corners and private chambers.
Not every species agreed with the decision.
Some saw opportunity where others saw threat. Some recognized that fear, not wisdom, was driving the Council's actions. And on Earth, the news was spreading. Dr. Heian had sent a data burst before entering the Taeguk Dawn. It was encrypted and hidden, set to release automatically after a certain time. Now that information was reaching every human government, every space agency, every independent research station. The message was simple. The Taeguk Dawn has returned and it carries the key to dimensional travel. Within hours, human space erupted in activity. Ships began moving toward the quarantine zone. Military vessels, civilian transports, research ships, even private yachts. Humanity had learned that one of their lost ships had come home, and they were not going to let the Galactic Council destroy it without a fight. Aboard the Taeguk Dawn, Heian watched the Council fleet approach on the sensors. 15 warships, each capable of destroying a planet. They formed a loose sphere around the ghost vessel. Weapons charged but not yet firing. They're hailing us, Bora said from the communication station. Put them through, Heian said. The main screen showed a Velshara commander. Behind him, Heian could see rows of weapon stations manned and ready. Attention human vessel. You are ordered to evacuate the Taeguk Dawn immediately. This ship has been designated a threat to galactic stability and will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to comply. And if we refuse? Heian asked. The Velshara commander's expression did not change. Then you will be destroyed with it. We take no pleasure in this, but we will not allow dimensional travel technology to fall into human hands. You do not understand what you have found. You do not understand the danger. We understand perfectly, Heian said. You're afraid, not of the technology, but of what humans will do with it. You're afraid that we'll surpass you, that we'll stop following your rules. Your arrogance confirms our concerns, the commander said. 1 hour, the transmission ended. Heian looked around the bridge. Jae-sung was at the pilot station, his hands moving across controls that were 73 years old but still responded perfectly. Byung-soo was interfacing with Kwan-ho's dimensional drive, making final preparations. Bora was monitoring life support and medical systems ready for anything. The echoes of the Taeguk Dawn crew were still visible throughout the ship, but they seemed more focused now. More aware, Commander Dong-hyun stood beside Heian, his form solid and real despite being made of pure consciousness. We're running out of time, he said. The council won't wait. They'll open fire the moment the hour is up. How long until we're ready? Heian asked Byung-soo. The dimensional drive is charging now, but it needs a final catalyst. It needs living human consciousness to complete the circuit. He looked up from his console. We need to do this now. All of us, like we discussed. Kwan-ho's form appeared beside Byung-soo. I've prepared 4 connection points. 1 for each of you. When you activate them, your consciousness will merge with the ship's systems. You'll experience what we experienced. You'll see the infinite possibilities. And you'll need to choose one, Dr. Misun added. 1 timeline, 1 reality, 1 path home. Choose wisely because the future of humanity depends on this moment. Jae-sung stood up from the pilot station. No pressure, right? He tried to smile, but Heian could see the fear in his eyes. This was not like flying a fighter. This was entering unknown territory with no map and no guarantee of return. I've configured the system to distribute the load, Kwan-ho explained. Each of you will carry 25% of the burden. It should be safer than one person trying to handle everything. Should be. You don't sound certain, Bora said. Because we're not certain. We're making this up as we go. But that's always been the human way, hasn't it? We try impossible things and sometimes they work. Commander Dong-hyun placed his hand on Heian's shoulder. She could feel it despite knowing he was not physically real. I'm proud of you. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that. Your grandmother would be proud too. Our whole family would be proud. Tell them yourself, Heian said. When we get home. They moved to the 4 connection points Kwan-ho had prepared. They looked like normal control stations, but with additional neural interface equipment attached. Each one had a chair and a headset that would link directly to their brain's electrical patterns. Once you activate the connection, there's no stopping the process, Kwan-ho warned. The dimensional jump will happen. Either we'll materialize in normal space near Earth, or we'll be scattered across multiple realities. There's no middle ground. How long will it take? Jae-sung asked. From your perspective, maybe 30 seconds. From an outside observer, it could be instantaneous or it could take hours. Time becomes flexible when you're moving between dimensions. They sat down in the chairs. Heian's hands were shaking as she picked up the neural interface headset. She had never been afraid of technology before, but this was different. This was not just connecting to a computer. This was merging her mind with something that existed across multiple realities. On 3, Byung-soo said. 1, 2, Heian put on the headset. The universe exploded. Suddenly, she was everywhere and nowhere. She could see the Taeguk Dawn from outside, surrounded by the council fleet. She could see Earth, distant but clear. She could see the frontier void, that impossible space where realities touched. And she could see beyond. She could see timelines branching like trees, infinite possibilities spreading out in every direction. In one timeline, the council destroyed the ship and everyone died. In another, they completed the jump but the crew was lost forever. In another, Earth rejected the dimensional technology as too dangerous. In another, humanity spread across infinite realities and became gods. She could feel the others with her. Jae-sung's consciousness, sharp and focused like a fighter pilot's instinct. Byung-soo's mind, methodical and precise like an engineer's blueprint. Bora's thoughts, careful and analytical like a scientist's observation. And Commander Dong-hyun led them deeper into the bridge. With each step, Heian felt the air change around her. It was like walking through layers of reality. each one slightly different from the last. The temperature shifted. The light bent in strange ways. For a moment she saw double, as if the bridge existed in two places at once. "This is what the void does," Dong-hyun explained. "It shows you that reality is not fixed. There is no single timeline, no single universe. There are infinite possibilities and they all exist simultaneously." Byung-soo was frantically taking notes on his tablet. "The energy readings here are off every scale I have. How's the ship holding together?" "Because we're holding it together," a new voice said. A woman appeared from a side corridor. She wore an engineer's uniform and had oil stains on her hands. Haein recognized her from the crew photos. This was Kwan-ho, the chief engineer who had designed the Taeguk-Dawn systems. "Our consciousness is literally keeping the ship anchored to this reality," Kwan-ho explained. "When we crossed into the void, we realized that human minds work differently than we thought. Other species see the universe as fixed, objective, unchangeable. But human minds are flexible. We see possibilities. We imagine things that don't exist yet. And in the void, imagination becomes power." Another figure joined them, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Dr. Mi-sun, the chief scientist. "We spent 3 months mapping the dimensional pathways," she said. 3 months that were 73 years for Earth. The void exists outside normal time. It's a space between universes where the laws of physics are more like suggestions. Jae-sung was looking at all of them with suspicion. "You keep saying we, but where is everyone else? Where are the other 197 crew members?" "All around you," Dong-hyun said. He gestured to the walls, the floor, the ceiling. "We're distributed throughout the ship. Some of us are more focused, more able to appear and communicate. Others are spread thin, existing as pure consciousness without physical form. The echoes you saw, the repeated actions, those are the crew members who are less focused. They're stuck in loops, reliving moments from before we understood what was happening to us." "So you're all ghosts," Bora said flatly. "No," Mi-sun said firmly. "We're evolved. We've transcended normal physical existence. Our bodies are gone, yes, but our minds, our consciousness, our essential selves remain. We exist in a quantum state, anchored to this ship and to each other." Haeun's scientific training was screaming at her that this was impossible, but she was standing in front of her grandfather, talking to him, seeing him. Impossible did not seem to mean much anymore. "Show me how it works," she said. "Show me what you discovered." Dong-hyun nodded. He walked to the main control panel and placed his hand on it. The screens around the bridge lit up with images that hurt to look at. Multiple realities stacked on top of each other. Timelines branching like trees. Universes that were similar to this one but different in small ways. In one, Earth had never developed space travel. In another, humans had spread across the galaxy thousands of years ago. In another, Earth did not exist at all. "This is what the frontier void really is," Dong-hyun said. "It's a junction point where different realities touch. Most species can't perceive this. Their minds are too rigid. They see chaos and their instruments fail because their instruments are built on assumptions about fixed reality." Kwan-ho picked up the explanation. "But human instruments, human minds, we work differently. We can adapt. We can hold multiple contradictory ideas in our heads at the same time. When we entered the void, instead of going mad like other species, we evolved. We learned to navigate the dimensional pathways. I modified the ship's engines," Kwan-ho continued, excitement in his voice. "The normal faster-than-light drive uses conventional physics. But the dimensional drive I created uses consciousness as a navigation tool. Human consciousness. It lets us move between realities the way other ships move between stars. That's why the ship has been flickering," Byung-soo said, understanding dawning on his face. "It's been shifting between dimensional states. The temperature changes, the impossible energy readings, they're all because the ship is existing in multiple realities at once." "Exactly," Kwan-ho said, "and now we've learned to control it. We can stabilize the ship in any reality we choose. We've been using this ability to find our way home, traveling through dimensions until we reach the one where Earth still exists, and where we left from." Jae-sung crossed his arms. "If you have this incredible power, why do you need our help? Why not just fly home yourself?" Mi-sun's expression became sad. "Because we're incomplete. We've been in this state too long. Our connection to physical reality is weak. We can keep the ship functional, we can send messages, we can even appear to you like this, but we can't fully materialize the ship back into normal space. Not alone. We need living humans," Dong-hyun said, looking at his granddaughter. people who are still fully anchored to physical reality. If you help us, if you connect your consciousness to the ship's systems, you can be the bridge we need. You can pull the Taeguk Dawn and its crew fully back into the real world. And then what? Heian asked. What happens to you? What happens to the crew? We don't know, Donghyun admitted. We might become fully physical again. We might remain as we are. We might simply cease to exist. But that's not what matters most. What matters is the knowledge we're carrying. The dimensional drive, the navigation charts, the proof that humans can do what no other species in the galaxy can do. Bora stepped forward. The Galactic Council. You said they're coming to destroy the ship. How do you know? Because we've seen them in other timelines, Misun said. We can perceive multiple futures. In most of them, the Council destroys this ship out of fear. They know that if humanity gains dimensional travel, the entire power structure of the galaxy will change. Humans are already seen as dangerous because we're unpredictable and aggressive. Give us the ability to move between realities and we become unstoppable. They're not entirely wrong to be afraid, Kwanho said. Dimensional travel is incredibly powerful. In the wrong hands, it could be used to alter timelines, to change history, to create or destroy entire realities. The Council has kept this knowledge suppressed for thousands of years. Any species that got close to discovering it was eliminated. But they couldn't eliminate us, Donghyun said with pride, because we were already in the void when they realized what we'd discovered. By then, we'd already learned too much. We'd already become too different. Heian looked at the screen showing the multiple realities. She thought about what her grandfather was saying. Humanity could travel between dimensions. They could explore infinite universes. They could become something more than just another species struggling to survive in one reality. But there was a cost. The crew of the Taeguk Dawn had paid that cost. They had given up their physical forms, their normal lives, their place in time. They had become something else, something between human and pure energy. How much time do we have? Heian asked. Misun checked one of the consoles. The Council fleet will arrive in approximately 4 hours. They'll try to negotiate first. Demand that we surrender. When we refuse, they'll open fire. The Taeguk Dawn can withstand some damage because we can phase between dimensions, but eventually they'll use weapons that can damage multiple realities at once. We won't survive that. So we have 4 hours to decide, Jae-sung said. Either we help you bring the ship home or we leave and let the Council destroy everything you've discovered. There's a third option, Bora said quietly. We could destroy the ship ourselves, prevent the Council from getting any data about what happened here. Keep dimensional travel secret? Everyone looked at her. She met their gazes without flinching. I'm just saying it's an option. If this technology is as dangerous as you say, maybe the galaxy isn't ready for it. Maybe humanity isn't ready for it. Donghyun shook his head. The galaxy will never be ready. There will always be reasons to be afraid, to hold back, to keep knowledge secret. But that's not how humans work. We explore. We push boundaries. We do things that scare us because the alternative is staying ignorant. He turned to Heian. This is why I sent the message to Earth. Why I made sure only humans could decode it. I knew someone would come. I hoped it would be family. And here you are, my granddaughter, trying to save me even though we've never met. Heian felt tears on her face. She did not remember starting to cry. What do you need us to do? The dimensional drive needs a living human consciousness to navigate the final jump back to normal space, Kwanho explained. One of you needs to connect directly to the ship's systems. It's the same process we all went through, but temporary. You'll merge your mind with the ship for a few minutes. You'll experience what we've been experiencing. You'll see all the possible futures, all the different timelines, and you'll choose the path that brings us home. It's dangerous, Misun warned. The human mind isn't meant to perceive multiple realities at once. You could lose yourself in the possibilities. You could become like us, trapped between states. Or worse, your consciousness could fragment and simply cease to exist. But if it works, Donghyun said, if we succeed, then humanity gains everything. The dimensional drive. The knowledge. The journey to the quarantine zone took 5 days. Jae-sung pushed the frigate as hard as he dared, but even with faster-than-light engines, space was vast and empty. They spent the time preparing for every scenario they could imagine. Byung-soo built a special device he claimed would let them interface with the Taeguk Dawn systems. He worked 16 hours a day, barely sleeping, surrounded by tools and wire and pieces of equipment that Heian could not identify. Bora studied every medical record of the crew they could find. looking for clues about their biology that might explain how they survived. Heian read her grandfather's journals over and over, searching for hints about what they might find. On the 5th day, Jae-sung called them all to the cockpit. "We're approaching the quarantine zone. I'm picking up 3 alien patrol ships on my sensors." Heian looked at the screen. The patrol ships were massive, at least twice the size of their small frigate. "Can we avoid them?" Jae-sung smiled in a way that made Bora nervous. Avoid them? No, sneak past them while they're not looking? Maybe. He turned off all the ship's non-essential systems. The lights dimmed. The temperature dropped. The frigate became a dark, cold piece of metal drifting through space, barely distinguishable from regular debris. Jae-sung used tiny bursts from the maneuvering thrusters, just enough to change their course without creating obvious engine signatures. They held their breath as they passed within a few kilometers of one of the patrol ships. Through the cockpit window, they could see the alien vessel's lights. They could make out shapes moving behind the windows. One wrong move, one active sensor ping, and they would be discovered. But Jae-sung was as good as his reputation. He guided the frigate through the blockade like a ghost, silent and invisible. 20 minutes later, they were clear and accelerating toward the Taeguk-Dawn's last known position. "There," Byung-soo said, pointing at his instruments. "I'm picking up the energy signature. Same pattern as the reports. It's real." They came around a small asteroid, and suddenly the Taeguk-Dawn was in front of them. Heian had seen pictures of the ship in the archives, but seeing it in person was different. It was enormous, a kilometer long, shaped like a spear pointing at the stars. The hull should have been white and silver, but now it looked strange. Parts of it seemed solid. Other parts looked transparent, like glass. And every few seconds, the whole ship would flicker, as if someone was turning reality on and off. "That's not possible," Bora whispered. "I'm reading temperature fluctuations across the hull," Byung-soo said, his voice shaking with excitement. "Minus 200 degrees on the port side, plus 3,000 degrees on the starboard side. The laws of thermodynamics say this can't happen." "The laws of physics seem to be more like suggestions around that ship," Jae-sung said. He brought their frigate closer, moving carefully.
Heian, are you sure about this?
Heian looked at the Taeguk-Dawn and thought about her grandfather. She thought about 200 people who had been lost in space for 73 years. She thought about the message. "We're coming home." "I'm sure," she said. "Take us in." Jae-sung maneuvered toward the docking port. As they got closer, something strange happened. The flickering stopped. The ship became solid and stable, as if it had been waiting for them. The docking port lights came on, bright and welcoming. "It recognizes us," Byung-soo said in wonder. "It knows we're human." The docking procedure went smoothly. Too smoothly. The Taeguk-Dawn's automated systems activated and guided their frigate into a perfect connection. The airlock sealed with a hiss and the lights in the corridor beyond turned on. "This is where the alien crew had all their problems," Bora said. "Their equipment failed. Their people panicked. But for us, it's easy." "Human neural patterns," Byung-soo explained. "I think the ship is keyed to respond only to human brainwaves. That's why the aliens couldn't board. The ship didn't recognize them as the crew. They put on their protective suits, though Heian was not sure the suits would help if something really went wrong. They checked their equipment one last time. Then they opened the airlock and stepped into the Taeguk-Dawn. The corridor looked exactly as it must have looked 73 years ago. The walls were clean. The lights worked perfectly. There was no dust, no decay, no sign that decades had passed. It was like walking onto a ship that had launched yesterday. "This doesn't make sense," Bora said. "Where's the aging? Where's the damage from 73 years in space?" They moved down the corridor carefully. Every few meters, the lights would flicker with that same strange pattern. Once, Heian thought she saw movement ahead of them, but when she looked directly at it, there was nothing there. They reached the mess hall first. That was where everything got truly strange. The room was full of people, crew members of the Taeguk-Dawn, wearing their uniforms, sitting at tables, eating food, talking to each other. They looked completely normal, completely alive, except they were not. Jae-sung walked up to one of the crew members, a young woman who was laughing at something her friend had said. "Hello?" Jae-sung said. "Can you hear me?" The woman did not respond. She continued laughing, continued eating as if Jae-sung did not exist. He reached out to touch her shoulder, and his hand passed through her like she was made of smoke. "They're not really here," Byung-soo said. He was scanning the figures with his instruments. I'm reading energy patterns but no actual physical mass. These are echoes. Recordings somehow burned into the ship itself. Bora approached another crew member, an older man who was reading from a tablet. She walked right through him. He did not notice. She turned and looked back at the man and gasped. I can see through him. Look, you can see the wall behind him. Heian moved through the mess hall, looking at each face, searching for someone she recognized. These people had been young when they left Earth. Her grandfather would be here somewhere, or at least his echo would be. They moved on to the medical bay, the crew quarters, the engineering section. Everywhere they went, they found echoes of the crew going about their daily routines. People working at consoles. People exercising in the gym. People sleeping in their bunks. All of them trapped in a moment, repeating the same actions over and over, unaware that anything was wrong. It's like they're stuck in time, Jayan said. A temporal loop playing the same scene forever. But where are the real people? Bora asked. The biosigns the aliens detected. If these are just echoes, where are the actual crew members? They got their answer when they reached the bridge. The command center of the Teguk Dawn was a large circular room filled with control stations and display screens. Standing in the center, looking out the main window at the stars, was a man in a commander's uniform. He had his back to them, but Heian knew who he was. She had seen enough pictures. She knew that posture, that way of standing. Grandfather, she whispered. The man turned around. Commander Dong-hyun looked exactly as he did in the photos from 73 years ago. Young, strong, confident. But his eyes were different. His eyes looked tired, as if he had seen things that no human should ever see. You shouldn't have come, he said, and his voice was clear and real, not like the echoes in the rest of the ship. But now that you're here, you need to understand what we found. He was looking directly at Heian. He could see her. He was aware. How? Heian managed to say. How are you here? How are you alive? Commander Dong-hyun smiled sadly. Alive? That's a complicated question. We're not dead, but we're not exactly alive either. Not in the way you understand it. We exist in between. We're part of the ship now, part of something bigger than ourselves. Jae-sung stepped forward. The frontier void, what happened when you went in? We found the truth, Dong-hyun said. We found what the void really is, and we found what humanity really is. He gestured to the main screen. Let me show you. The screen came to life, displaying images that made no sense at first. Multiple versions of reality, stacked on top of each other like pages in a book. Timelines that branched and merged, universes that touched and separated, and through it all, paths that only human minds could perceive. The void isn't empty, Commander Dong-hyun said. It's full of everything. Every possible reality exists there all at once, and humans somehow can see them all. We can navigate them. We can travel between them. The other species can't do this? Bora asked. They see only chaos and death, but we see possibilities and paths. It's something about human consciousness, something unique to us, and that knowledge, that ability is what we're bringing home. Heian felt her legs go weak. 73 years. How long has it been for you? 3 months, her grandfather said. Time works differently when you're walking between realities. For us, we left Earth just a few months ago, but we knew Earth time was passing faster. We knew we had to find our way back before we were forgotten entirely. The message, Heian said. We're coming home. Yes, but there's a problem. The Galactic Council knows we're here, and they're scared. They're coming to destroy this ship and everyone on it. You need to help us finish what we started. You need to help us bring this knowledge back to Earth before it's too late. Outside the ship, in the darkness of space, the first alien warships were arriving. Dr. Heian spent the next 3 days locked in the archives, reading everything she could find about the Teguk Dawn. The official reports were dry and lifeless, full of technical words and careful language. But between the lines, she could see the real story. She could see the hope and the fear that had driven her grandfather and his crew into the unknown. The mission had started with such excitement. 73 years ago, humanity was still new to space travel. Other alien races had been crossing the stars for thousands of years, but humans were just beginning. The Teguk Dawn was supposed to be humanity's grand statement. A ship full of Earth's best scientists and explorers, going farther than any human had ever gone before. Commander Dong-hyun had been chosen to lead the mission because he was brave and smart. The records showed he was only 35 years old when he left Earth. Heian looked at his photo in the files. He looked so young, so confident. He had her eyes and her stubborn chin. In the picture, he stood next to his chief engineer, a man named Quan Ho, who had designed most of the ship's special systems. The crew manifest listed 200 names. Heian read through them all. There was Dr. Misun, the head scientist who had spent 20 years studying dark matter. There were farmers who wanted to see if crops could grow in deep space. There were teachers, artists, engineers, and dreamers. They had all left behind families and homes, all for the chance to explore the frontier void. But why the frontier void? What had made them go to the most dangerous place in known space? Heian found the answer in her grandfather's personal logs. The Galactic Council had forbidden all species from entering the void. Too many ships had been lost. Too many good people had vanished. But Commander Dong Hyun had seen something different. He had studied the old reports and he had noticed a pattern. Every species that entered the void reported the same things before they disappeared. Their instruments would fail. Their crews would see impossible things. Reality itself seemed to break down. Other species see chaos, Dong Hyun had written in his log. But what if we see something else? What if the human mind can make sense of what they cannot? We will never know unless we try. It was so typical of humans, Heian thought. Other species saw danger and ran away. Humans saw danger and ran toward it to see what would happen. The Taeguk Dawn had entered the frontier void 6 months after leaving Earth. The last transmission had been short and excited. Quan Ho's voice saying they had found something amazing, an anomaly in space, a crack in reality itself. Then nothing. Silence. The ship had vanished from every sensor, every tracking system, every database. Earth had waited for 5 years before declaring the crew dead. Heian read the memorial service transcripts. Her grandmother had been there, pregnant with Heian's mother but already a widow. The whole world had mourned the loss of 200 brave souls, but they had not died. The message proved it. They were coming home. Heian closed the archive files and made her list. She needed 3 things: a fast ship, a skilled crew, and a way to get past the alien blockade. She had no money for any of it, and she had no authority to requisition military equipment, but she knew people. She had spent her whole career building connections with other scientists, pilots, and engineers who valued curiosity over rules. Her first call was to Jae Sung. He was a fighter pilot with a reputation for being reckless and brilliant in equal measure. He had been kicked out of the official military for ignoring orders too many times, but everyone agreed he was the best pilot humanity had ever produced. Heian found him at a bar near the spaceport. "You want me to fly you into a quarantine zone to board a haunted ship?" Jae-sung said, grinning. "When do we leave?" Her second call was to Byung-soo, an engineer who had spent his whole life studying Quan Ho's old designs. The man was obsessed with the Taeguk Dawn systems. He had written 3 books about the ship's engine configuration and had built working models of every major component. When Heian told him the ship had returned, he actually cried. "I'll bring my tools," he said. "If that ship is really out there, I need to see it." Her third call was to Bora, a xenobiologist who specialized in first contact situations. She was the practical one, the person who thought about problems before they happened. When Heian explained the plan, Bora was quiet for a long time. "This is insane," Bora finally said. "The Galactic Council will arrest us. The aliens might shoot us down, and if the ship really is haunted, we could all die horribly." "Yes," Heian agreed. "I'm in," Bora said, "but I'm bringing medical supplies and weapons. Just in case, getting a ship was harder. They could not buy one and they could not rent one for a mission into forbidden space, so they did what desperate people do. They stole one. Jae-sung had friends in low places. Through a series of contacts that Heian decided not to ask about, they gained access to a fast military frigate that was scheduled for decommissioning. It was old but functional, and more importantly, it had stealth systems and weapons that could handle a fight. "We borrow it for a week," Jae-sung said. "They'll probably notice it's gone, but by the time they figure out where we went, we'll be back." "And if we're not back in a week?" Bora asked. Jae-sung shrugged. "Then we're probably dead and the ship theft will be the least of our problems." They loaded the frigate with supplies in the middle of the night. Byung-soo brought equipment he would need to interface with the Taeguk Dawn systems. Bora brought enough medical gear to stock a small hospital. Heian brought all the data she had collected, plus her grandfather's old journals that her family had kept. As they prepared to launch, Heian stood in the cockpit and looked out at Earth. Somewhere down there, her mother was sleeping, unaware that her daughter was about to fly into danger, to rescue a grandfather she had never met. Heian felt guilty for not saying goodbye, but she knew her mother would try to stop her. "Ready?" Jae-sung asked from the pilot's seat. "Ready?" Heian said. The frigate lifted off silently, its stealth systems making it nearly invisible to tracking sensors. They cleared Earth's atmosphere and pointed toward the outer rim, toward the quarantine zone, toward the impossible ship that waited in the darkness. As they accelerated away from home, Byung-soo was already studying the data from Velthar's report. He kept shaking his head and muttering to himself. These energy readings don't make sense. It's like the ship is existing in multiple states at the same time. Quantum superposition on a massive scale. Can you explain that in normal language? Bora asked. The ship is everywhere and nowhere at once, Byung-soo said. Like Schrodinger's cat, but with a 200-person crew and a vessel the size of a city block. Heian listened to them talk, but her mind was on the message. We're coming home. 4 simple words that changed everything. Her grandfather was out there, along with 200 other people who had been missing for longer than Heian had been alive. They had survived something that should have killed them. They had found a way to send a message across impossible distances, and now, Heian and her small crew were going to bring them home, no matter what the cost. The frigate jumped to faster-than-light speed, and Earth disappeared behind them. Ahead lay the unknown, the forbidden, and the family that had been lost for 73 years. The alert came through every monitoring station in the outer rim at exactly the same time. A ship had appeared on the scanners. Not a new ship, but an old one. A dead one. Captain Velthar stared at his screen and felt something cold move through his body. The readings made no sense. The ship was there, then it was not there, then it was there again. The temperature sensors showed numbers that should not be possible. One moment the hull was colder than empty space. The next moment it was hotter than the surface of a star. Run the identification again, Velthar said to his crew. The young officer at the communications station worked quickly. His hands shook as he typed. Sir, the registration code matches a human vessel, the UNS Taeguk Dawn, but that ship was lost 73 years ago. Velthar had heard stories about human ships. Humans were new to the galaxy and they did strange things. They went to places where other species knew better than to go. They asked questions that had no good answers. But this was different. This was wrong in ways that made his skin crawl. What was it doing when it disappeared? Velthar asked. The records say it went into the frontier void, sir. No ship that enters that region ever comes back. The frontier void. Even the name made experienced pilots nervous. It was a place where space itself seemed to break down. Ships that went too close lost their navigation systems. Some reported seeing things that could not exist. Most simply vanished without sending any final message. And now it has come back, Velthar whispered. He gave the order to approach carefully. His ship moved toward the human vessel like a scared animal approaching something dead on the road. Every sensor was active. Every weapon was ready. Velthar did not know what he expected to find, but he knew it would not be good. As they got closer, the strange readings got stronger. The Taeguk Dawn was spinning slowly in space, but not in a natural way. It looked like the ship was fighting against itself. Parts of it seemed to flicker like a bad video image. Velthar's engineer reported that the energy coming from the vessel changed every few seconds. Sometimes it had power. Sometimes it was completely dark. There was no pattern. Life signs? Velthar asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Yes, no, maybe. The sensor officer sounded frustrated. Sir, the biosigns appear and disappear. One moment I read 200 life forms. The next moment 0, then 50, then back to 200. It's like they're not really there. Velthar made his decision. Prepare a boarding team. We need to see inside that ship. 3 of his best crew members put on protective suits and took the small shuttle across the gap between the 2 ships. Velthar watched from his command chair, his fingers tight on the armrests. The shuttle reached the Taeguk Dawn's docking port and tried to connect. That was when everything went wrong. The shuttle's system shut down instantly. The lights died. The radio went silent. Velthar watched in horror as the small craft went dark and started to drift away from the human ship. His crew managed to restart the emergency systems and pull back, but 2 of the 3 crew members were shaking and could barely speak. When they finally returned to the main ship, they told a story that made no sense. They said they had seen people inside the Taeguk Dawn, human shapes moving through the corridors, but the figures were wrong somehow. They walked through walls. They cast shadows in the wrong direction. One crew member swore he saw the same person in 3 different places at the same time. "It's haunted," the young officer said, and no one laughed at him. Velthar filed his report with the Galactic Council immediately. He recommended that all ships stay far away from the Teguk Dawn. He called it a hazard to navigation and possibly a threat. The Council agreed and established a quarantine zone around the vessel. No one was to approach it. No one was to board it. It would drift in space until they could decide what to do with it. But Velthar did one more thing before he left. He sent all the data to Earth. Humans should know that one of their ships had returned from the impossible. He did not know if they would care. He did not know if they would even understand the danger. On Earth, in a research facility in Seoul, Dr. Hae-in was working late when the message arrived. She almost deleted it, thinking it was another false report. The galaxy was full of debris and old signals. People saw ghost ships all the time, and they were always just sensor errors or space junk. But then she saw the registration code. UNS Teguk Dawn. Her hand stopped moving. Her breath caught in her throat. She had seen that name before. It was written on a memorial stone in the National Cemetery. It was in her family's history records. Her grandfather had been the captain of that ship. Commander Dong-hyun had left Earth when Hae-in was not yet born. He had taken 200 brave people into deep space, looking for answers to questions about how the universe worked. They had gone into the frontier void and they had never come back. The government had declared them dead. Her family had mourned. Life had moved on. But now this message said the ship had returned. Hae-in read through all the data that Velthar had sent. The strange readings, the flickering life signs, the reports from the boarding team about seeing people who were not quite there. She read it twice, then 3 times. Her scientific training told her this was impossible. But something else inside her, something deeper, told her it was real. She started to close the file when she noticed something. There was a transmission embedded in the data. It was coded in an old Earth format, something from 70 years ago. The aliens had missed it completely because their systems did not know how to read human encryption from that era. Hae-in's fingers flew across her keyboard. She had studied old communication systems as part of her training. It took her 20 minutes to decode the message. When the words appeared on her screen, she felt tears begin to fall. The message was short. Just 4 words repeating over and over. "We're coming home." Hae-in sat in the dark laboratory and stared at those words. Her grandfather was out there. The crew of the Teguk Dawn was out there. And somehow, against everything that science said was possible, they were still alive after 73 years. She made her decision in less than a minute. She did not care what the Galactic Council said. She did not care about quarantine zones or warnings. That ship held her family, and she was going to bring them home. Hae-in began making calls. She would need a ship. She would need a crew. And she would need to move fast before the Council decided to destroy the Teguk Dawn as a safety hazard. The ghost vessel was not a ghost at all. It was a beacon, and Hae-in was going to answer it.